Today, we're covering the story of a young woman named Marie Robards, who after reading a monologue from Hamlet her senior year of high school, was so overcome with guilt that it led her to confessing to a crime she'd gotten away with a year earlier. We'll be serving this story up today with a vegan tourtière, a modern take on a traditional meat pie served in Shakespearean times. Marie Robards was the new girl at Mansfield High School, and all the girls were totally jealous of her. With her gorgeous long hair and movie star features, all the boys in school could pay attention to, no one but her. It also didn't help that she was a straight-A student who was athletic and super sweet. Marie joined the volleyball team and the yearbook staff and jumped right into other activities like drama, journalism, and keyboarding. And teachers were super impressed with the new kid who wanted to get involved with everything. And the students found her elegant and mysterious. She was very reserved and refused to talk about her past, which, of course, is what made her so frustratingly fascinating. Some girls swore Marie said something about her dad having passed, but others thought they remembered she said he was still alive. Because Marie didn't open up much, a lot of the girls found her intimidating and kind of gave up trying to be friends with her. But Stacy High, who was voted most humorous by the senior class, took a particular interest in Marie and made it her mission to befriend her. Stacy, unlike her peers, thought Marie might have come to school perfectly dressed every single day because she was trying to hide a flaw. Coming from a traumatic childhood herself, Stacy had seen enough psychologists to tell that Marie had probably gone through something too. While Little Miss, most humorous, was successful, and soon enough the two girls were inseparable. They bonded over both not having fathers. Marie's, as it turned out, had passed away the year prior in 1993, and Stacy's dad lived in Mississippi and she almost never saw him. Stacy continued to try to push Marie outside of her comfort zone and have a little fun in life. One night, she took Marie to a country western bar after dressing her up in tight jeans and a cute outfit and giving her a fake ID. The patrons at the bar were so stunned by Marie, they allegedly nicknamed her the Cowboy Barbie doll. So Stacy and Marie were writing partners on the yearbook staff together and were kind of a dream team. Stacy asked all the questions and Marie did all the writing, both things that they were excellent at. Stacy said she always tried to get Marie to open up about her dad, but every time she did, the walls went up. But of all things to get her to talk about her past, it was Shakespeare, the author most high schoolers love to hate, that finally got Marie to spill. One night in January of 1994, Stacy invited Marie over for a little study sesh, and Marie brought her cliff notes on Hamlet. According to Stacy, they'd reached her favorite part in the play, the soliloquy of Claudius, the guy who poisoned his brother, aka Hamlet's dad. Claudius contemplated whether his crimes could ever truly be forgiven and asked what form of prayer is possible to save him. Stacy finished reading the monologue and looked across the table to see that Marie was shaking and pale. Stacy was like, "Oh shit, what's wrong?" And Marie asked Stacy a kind of haunting question. She was like, "Stacy, do you think people can go through life without a conscience?" Stacy, thinking Marie was asking about the play, was kind of like, "Well, how about a person who can look somebody in the eye while ending their life?" When she said that, Marie got out of her chair and collapsed onto the floor. Stacy was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong?" And Marie was all, "Guess." Stacy, as a 17-year-old, thought about the worst predicament a girl her age could be in and guessed, "Are you pregnant?" And Marie said, "No." "You wrecked your grandparents' car?" "No." Stacy jokingly asked her, I don't know, you didn't kill someone, did you?" Marie looked up and through her sobs admitted that she'd poisoned her own father. In a plot twist worthy of Billy Shakes himself, Marie admitted that she was the reason for her own father's mysterious illness the year before, and that she'd completely gotten away with it. Just like how the guilt ate up Claudius after he poisoned the king. It had finally become too much for Marie, and she needed to confess her crimes. The dark secret that Marie had kept for so long was finally brought to light, and now it was Stacy's turn to suffer in silence, as she too had to keep the information to herself. Stacy tried to keep the secret for weeks, not wanting to betray her closest friend, but eventually the secret began to sit in her like a poison, bubbling and festering until she couldn't stand it any longer. After a few weeks of dealing with her existential crisis, Stacy finally contacted the police. 8 months later, officers arrived at Marie's freshman dorm room at the University of Texas, telling her that she had some splaining to do. The cops stared at the polite-looking teenager seated in the interrogation room and expected her to explain away what had actually happened, but instead, she just admitted to it immediately. Shocked, they asked if Stephen had ever hurt her or had done things he shouldn't have done, and she said no. So why did Marie choose to put barium acetate in her dad's food that one fateful night? Marie said it was the only way she could get back home, and the investigators were like, huh? But let's go back in time a bit. Back to a time when Stephen Robards was still alive and Marie was just a twinkle in her daddy's eye. So Marie's parents, Beth and Stephen, had met in the 70s and were high school sweethearts. They got hitched as soon as they turned 18. And right after that, Stephen started his 4-year tour with the Navy. 2 years in, Beth gave birth to their only child, Dorothy Marie Robards. And after bouncing around the country for a bit, the family eventually made their way back to Fort Worth, Texas. But with all of the moving around, the couple's relationship had started to strain. And in 1980, the two separated, Beth taking Marie with her. According to Beth, Stephen had depressive episodes after their wedding, and she admitted to being a naive teenager caught up in a whirlwind of romance. By 1981, Beth had remarried a guy named Frank Burroughs, a Navy officer she'd met while Stephen was stationed in Florida. Marie was now 4, and the family moved to Granbury, where she could still visit her dad around once or twice a month in Fort Worth. Marie grew up and went to Granbury High School and was described as an excellent student who stayed out of trouble. She played the clarinet, took art classes and dance lessons, and had a couple close friends. All seemed to be going well for the family, but unfortunately, this isn't a production of All's Well That Ends Well. On the weekend before her 16th birthday, Marie came home to find her stepdad with another woman, and it absolutely shattered her. Frank completely owned up to it and apologized, though, and Beth told Marie that she forgave Frank and she was choosing to stay with him. Frank swore to be a better husband and dad from then on, and he was, but Marie couldn't stand her stepdad anymore and completely withdrew. One day, she went to her mom and said that she couldn't tolerate Frank anymore and that she needed to divorce him. Beth said sorry, that wasn't going to happen, so Marie told her she was moving out. Marie went to live with her grandparents on her mom's side and transferred to a local high school in Fort Worth. 5 days later, Marie decided she didn't want to live there anymore and showed back up on her parents' doorstep asking them to take her back. But Frank had strict rules about leaving the house. His rule was once a kid chooses to leave, that was final and they weren't ever allowed back. Frank had kept that rule when his own son had left home to be with his mom, and just like how he didn't allow him back when he asked, he wasn't going to let Marie back either. Beth said it was a terrible scene. Everyone was out on the front lawn screaming and crying, and it felt like she had to choose between her husband and her daughter, and ultimately she agreed that the rules should be followed and that Marie needed to learn her lesson. Beth called up Stephen, asked if Marie could stay with him, and he agreed. She didn't think it was a punishment in any way at the time, but looking back now, she said she could see how Marie thought she was abandoning her. Stephen Robards, on the other hand, was delighted about the turn of events. Medication had helped him with his depression, he was in a new relationship with a single mom, and he had a new job as a mail carrier that he loved. He was totally stoked to have his daughter join him and applied for a 2-bedroom apartment in his complex in preparation. While living with her dad, Marie wrote letters to her mom about how miserable she was, saying she hated her school, she hated her dad's small apartment, the few kitchen utensils he had, and how he couldn't keep his house clean. Stephen still tried his best with Marie and often taking her out to dinner or to the movies and doing everything he could to make sure she was comfortable and taken care of. But every single day for those few weeks, Marie was on the phone with Beth and Frank, pleading to let her come home. Beth and Frank were firm in their decision and told Marie she couldn't come back to Granbury and that she'd made her decision. Despite Marie being downright miserable, she hid it fairly well. She continued to get straight A's and excel in every subject in school, her chemistry teacher even saying she was in the top 2% of her students. Her chemistry teacher remembered Marie briefly mentioning wanting to move back home with her mother, but that she always appeared to be nice, happy, and a bubbly girl. By Christmas, it seemed that Marie had finally adjusted to her surroundings and wasn't calling or writing home as much to talk about how miserable she was. But all that glitters isn't gold. Just because it seemed like she'd stopped fighting to get back home, it didn't necessarily mean she'd given up just yet. Marie knew she needed to come up with a way to get herself back home, and since begging and pleading hadn't worked, and clicking her heels together 3 times wasn't cutting it either, it was time to turn to more drastic measures. But rather than hitting up the local apothecary for a magic potion, the answer came to her one day in chemistry class while looking at a little skull and crossbones marked bottle that was sitting on her desk. The lab called for barium acetate that day, and when Marie saw the large red letters that read "poisonous" on the bottle, she secretly poured a little of the powder into a napkin and hid it in her backpack. According to Marie, on the night of February 18th, she slipped the barium acetate into her dad's dinner. The two ate their dinner, then Steve left for a Wednesday night church service, only to return less than an hour later complaining of a stomachache. When he started to become violently ill, Marie went next door to let her neighbor Sandra know her dad wasn't feeling well. Sandra let Marie stay in her apartment with her young son while she went to go check on Stephen. When she got there, she found Stephen lying in a bed, complaining that his arms and legs were going stiff. When she noticed he was having trouble swallowing, she immediately called 911. As soon as she turned around to make the call, Stephen declined rapidly. Sandra heard a horrible gurgling sound and turned around to see Stephen foaming at the mouth, with his eyes staring wide open, and she was freaking terrified. Paramedics arrived and tried to get Stephen an oxygen tube, but unfortunately his throat had completely closed up, and it was too late. Sandra watched in shock as Marie stood in the doorway frozen, not saying a word. There was nothing they could do, and later that night, Beth and Frank came to the hospital to take Marie back to Granbury. Marie stood in a daze beside her dad's grave at the funeral, and Beth took Marie aside to inform her that she and Frank were having problems. So she and Marie were moving to Florida. Beth remembered the moment vividly. Marie stared at her, and after a while she goes, "You had this plan all along to take me to Florida?" And her mom was like, "Yeah, I got a job there. Why? What's wrong?" To this day, Beth believes that if she'd only told Marie a week earlier that they were moving to Florida, that none of this would have happened. Sure enough, the gals moved to Panama City, where Beth got a job as an admin assistant and Marie enrolled in the local high school. Soon after, Marie became majorly depressed to the point where she wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, and Beth worried she was experiencing some of the same manic depression that Stephen had suffered with. A few months later, who shows up at the door? None other than the flim-flammin' floozy Frank, who swore this time to be faithful. And Marie and Beth both took him back after his sincere promise to be a better husband and father. But fucking Frank would break his promise within a matter of weeks. Marie found a note in Frank's pillowcase from the other woman. After that, Marie told her mom, "Mom, you can put up with him if you want to, but I don't have to. I miss Texas. I'm going home." Beth once again chose her husband and stayed with him in Florida while Marie called up her grandpa and asked if she could move in with him and his wife. Having tragically lost their son, Stephen, to a mysterious illness, Marie's grandpa was delighted to have his granddaughter move in with him. The Robards said they didn't suspect a thing and that Marie never behaved out of the ordinary. In fact, they thought that this was her way of trying to make it up to the family somehow, by trying to be the best granddaughter she could be. Determined to have a fresh start, Marie enrolled in her senior year, got involved in extracurriculars, and became friends with Manfield High School's most humorous senior, Stacy High. And while she didn't know it at the time, Stacy High would become one of her closest friends and eventually the person who would turn her in. Marie's lawyers tried to convince the jury that Marie didn't know that the barium acetate was lethal and that she'd only wanted to make her dad sick enough so that she could go home to her mom. But after hearing about what a star student Marie was, especially in chemistry class, they were having a hard time selling that Marie didn't know exactly what the powder was capable of. When Marie took the stand, she burst into tears and apologized for what she did, repeating over and over again that she was so sorry. Marie was found guilty and sentenced to 28 years in prison and would be eligible for parole after 7. When her psychologist from the trial went to visit her in county jail, she told him she was hoping to get her degree while she was in there and was anxious to improve herself. Marie called her mom every night from jail, and in one of those calls told Beth that she hoped Stacy didn't feel bad about going to the cops. She said she still liked her, and after all, they'd once been best friends. And with that, we draw a close on this twisted tale of tragedy. While Marie might have ultimately found her way home, I doubt the devastation as a result of her actions ever made it feel worth it. Now let's see how our Elizabethan-style little meat pie turned out. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time, but for now, the rest is silent.